Let me guess, you spent hours watching color grading tutorials on YouTube, trying to crack the code to perfect that cinematic look that everyone talks about. And if you're new to video editing, it doesn't take long before someone tells you you need to color grade your footage if you want it to look professional. And yeah, they're not wrong. But here's the problem. Most of those color grading tutorials on YouTube, they're made by insanely talented people working on Hollywood films, Netflix shows, and music videos with huge budgets. And me? I'm just trying to make content that looks amazing for my clients who are probably going to use it for the web and for social media, and I want to do it fast. And maybe you're the same. So then people will say, well, just slap on a LUT. Believe me, I have tried. I've spent way too much money than I care to share on LUTs that promise to be the one-size solution that fits all. Spoiler alert, most of them are not. They might work beautifully on some kinds of footage, but on yours or on a different camera, you're stuck tweaking endlessly, and that's time you just don't have. That's why tools like Dehancer exist. Dehancer is a film emulation plugin, and unlike LUTs, it doesn't care about what camera you're using. Give it mobile footage, action cams, mirrorless setups, or high-end cinema cameras, Dehancer gives you that dreamy cinematic filmic look with very minimal effort. Here, check it out for yourself. Why do we do this? Why do we come here? Alone. Before the sun rises, before the world even stirs. Not for praise, not for followers, not for likes, but for the quiet wall within. We chase the edge, that line between comfort and chaos, because on the other side of easy is everything we're truly made of. Every rep is a choice, every drop of sweat a promise. To show up, to dig deeper, to become more. Not just stronger, wiser, sharper, unbreakable. Comfort is the killer of progress. Growth lives in the fire, in the discomfort, in the moments where quitting whispers your name and you answer with a roar. This isn't just about fitness. It's about life, about choosing to suffer today, so tomorrow we rise. As leaders, as warriors, as our best damn selves. This is why we do it. Not to impress, but to transform. Every day we suffer, we evolve. An evolution? That's earned. Now I came up with that sequence using some stock footage and music from Artlist and my own voiceover. Today I'm going to show you exactly how I used Dehancer to get this look step by step. Now, full transparency, Dehancer did give me a free license to try out their product and share my thoughts, but they don't get any say in this video before it goes live. Oh, and if you do decide to try it, then you can use my code SUNGAV for 10% off, and they're going to give me 10% of the money that you give them. I appreciate if you use the code, it really does help me out, and hopefully Dehancer will help you to create better looking videos. Fair trade. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and you can see I've got a couple of these clips from my stock footage on my timeline. These are straight from the stock footage site, and you can see that they have been color graded and finished and have been output. So depending on your clips, your workflow might be slightly different. I will show you a log profile workflow as well, but just want to show you this demo because this is the footage that I used earlier. Now, before we do anything, we want to make sure that we're in the right color space within DaVinci Resolve. I'm actually going to be following the steps that Dehancer highlight on their website. So if you go to their homepage, dehancer.com, and go to the Learn option up here, you can see this option for workflows. And here you'll see different workflows depending on what you are doing. So I'm in DaVinci Resolve. They've got a node sequence workflow if that's your thing. I'm actually going to be using the DaVinci Wide Gamut pipeline. So I'll click on that one. They've got two options here. You can choose the simple or the advanced. Remember at the top of this video, I say I'm all about speed and ease. You could go to town on this, and I know that there are so many different ways to color grade. I am not a colorist. I'm not a color grading professional. So for me, I want a simple workflow. So I'm going to choose simple. Back into DaVinci Resolve. We want to go down here to the bottom where you have this gear cog, and that's your project settings, and go into your color management tab. Now you want to make sure your color management is DaVinci YRGB color managed, and automatic color management will be checked by default. Uncheck that. And in color processing mode, you want to select HDR DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. And then you want your output color space to be Rec 709. Hit save. Now what we're going to do is we need to go over to our color page, because that is where Dehancer lives. So once we're in our color page, depending on your workflow and how you do your grading, you may have several different nodes here. I normally work with a simple kind of 4-node workflow. So just hitting Option S on my keyboard, and that gives me 4 nodes like so. You might select this one. I'm not going to go through this, but for example, this might be your exposure. This one might be your saturation, and this one might be your white balance, for example. But I'm going to assume that I'm already happy with exposure, saturation, and white balance on this video. And then your Dehancer node is going to be the last one in your workflow. Now, this is again what they recommend according to their website. So I'm just going to follow that along as if I'm a complete novice when it comes to color management. And yeah, I pretty much am. So we scroll down to the bottom of your effects panel within your color page. And right at the bottom, you should have film emulation, and you'll see this Dehancer Pro. I've got the version 7.3.1 at the time of shooting this video. So I'm going to drag that onto my Node 4, and you can see immediately that's done something to this image. It's added some grain, it adds some film look. So we're going to now have a little play around with this. So you'll see that the Dehancer settings come up in your inspector here, and you can toggle that on and off, and you can see exactly what that's done. When you immediately add Dehancer to your footage, you're going to see changes in your scopes, and you're going to see a whole load of settings on this inspector panel. It can be relatively overwhelming. So what I tend to do is I minimize. The best way to do that is to hit Option on your keyboard, and I'm using a Mac, Option, and then click one of these little drop down arrows, and that will minimize all of the options that you have here. So you can see here, there is an absolute ton of tools. Now, I personally don't go through and use every single one of these. I don't use most of them. Let's go through these. The very first one you want to select is your input. So here you want to make sure that we have selected the correct source. Now, if you recall, when we were back in our color management, we had put this into a DaVinci Wide Gamut color space. So we need to select that from here. So we want to click on this drop down, and you'll see here we've got DaVinci Resolve Wide Gamut Intermediate. Select that, and you can see that also changed the footage a little bit. It went less blue there as well. So this is really important because this is the color space that we want to work in. Now, right off the bat down here, you've got a series of tools like exposure compensation. If I just push and pull that, you'll see the scopes changing. You'll see the exposure changing in the image. So you could play around with that. So I'm going to just, actually, I was quite happy where it was, to be fair. So I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to leave that exactly where it is. You've got a bit of temperature control here. So if you didn't want to use your white balance node here, you could control that temperature through here. So I'm going to just make this a little bit warmer just for the purposes of my personal taste. And that's really the thing with color grading for me, is that it really is what your eye sees, and everyone's eyes are going to see something different. It's a little bit like taste in that way, right? It's very subjective. So what you like, I may not like. What I like, you may not like, and that's totally okay. So I don't think there's a real right or wrong to this when it comes to grading footage like this. You've got tint compensation, differential. I don't touch any of these. I leave that exactly as it is. So that's my input done. Okay, the next one, which is important, is your film. Now, this really is the kind of nuts and bolts of Dehancer. Film profiles are effectively your film stock. So you can go onto their website and you will see that they have got descriptions of all the different types of film stocks that they have. And when you drop this menu down, you can see what I mean. There is absolutely dozens of them on here. In fact, I've used some of these. Kodak Gold 200. I remember I used to sell that in my dad's shop, and I used to put that into my very first film camera as well. So you can just go through and select some of these and see which ones you like the look of. Some of them are black and white, some of them are color, and you will see that this changes the look of your footage. So you can see here. Now, the one I used for this, I believe, was the Kodak Where's it gone? Now, this portrait is a very popular one amongst photographers. I know they like to use the portrait films. I think I use the Vision 500T. Now, the T stands for tungsten. That's tungsten lighting. That doesn't mean you can't use it on lighting that's not daylight balance. Again, if you like the look of it, then go for it. That's the daylight balance. You can see it's a little bit cooler in the image, but I personally quite liked this. So what I'm going to do is go back to that input, and I'm going to just drop that temperature down because that probably has added a bit too much for me. I'm going to just drop that down a little bit there. That's perfect. Cool. Minus. So we've gone under now as well, which is fine. So going back to here, and then you can push and pull this film emulation as much as you want. So I can increase it here. That's the exposure value, and I can drop it down here, and you can see it kind of flitters in between. You can see the scopes doing some weird stuff there as well. So I'm going to just leave that pretty much where it was, and you can enable and disable that film, and you can see what effect it has on your image. So that is really the main part. Now, that might be it, right? You may just go, yep, pick a film, enabled, done, happy days, and you are happy with that. The next one that I do go through is I do go into Film Developer, and I just have a little look at the contrast, the gamma correction, and the color separation and the color boost here. So if I enable this first, so you can see what that does, right off the bat, that doesn't really do much. So you can color boost your colors there. So that gives it a little bit more contrast. As you can see, the darks have gone really dark, or you could push it the other way, and that reduces the contrast. I personally think that film, when you watch movies that are shot on film or have got that film look, they're not very contrasty. Now, again, this is very subjective, but I've actually taken a lot of film photography many, many moons ago. And, you know, the photos are often quite flat, right? They're quite lacking in contrast. So I do like to pull this contrast boost down. So I think about minus 20-ish looks good to me. So I'm going to just take that. Yeah, you can see it's very subtle. And I think that's the key when it comes to color grading. It's a little bit like cooking with spices. You know, a little bit goes a long way. So don't overdo these things. But again, you know, do it to your heart's content and whatever you like. Gamma correction. So you can have a look at this as well. This just changes the gamma in the image. I'm going to bring that just a little bit higher here, just about there, 7.4. Color separation is already at 100. Now, for me, this is not really doing much here. So again, I'm not too sure what that is, what's happening with that one. And then color boost, it does what it says on the tin. That's almost like your saturation. You can see here that this red, whatever is on this cover, the ring here, her hair, it's all kind of, you know, become a little bit more saturated. So I'm going to just pull that. You can put it all the way back, and that goes to black and white. So that really is like your saturation. I'm going to just leave that where it was. In fact, I'll give it a little bit of a boost. Just give it a bit of color. There we go. And let's enable, disable. You can see that it's just flatten the image out a little bit more, reduce the contrast. Film compression, expand, I leave completely alone. The next one I use is print, and this is going to determine, I guess, the type of paper that you are printing your film on. So by default, it goes to linear. You've got Cineon Film Log if you're using that profile. Then you've got Fujifilm print film, Kodak 2383 print film, which is quite a nice one. I think for this one, I use the glossy paper. Yeah, I use this Kodak Enduro glossy paper. Again, very subjective. Pick the look that you like. A lot of people find this 2383 print film that works for a lot of footage. For me, I pick the Enduro glossy paper. And again, you got some exposure values here. You can push and pull these, but I tend not to use this too much. So I'll just leave that where it was. You've got your tonal contrast. Again, that just plays around with the contrast. In fact, I'll maybe just take that down a little bit here. And then you've got a saturation slider as well, all the way down black and white, all the way up, it's back to where it was. And you can disable that and enable that, and you can see that has just changed that image a little bit more there as well. Now comes the main ones that I use. So I do use film grain, so I'm going to go into that one next. And film grain just gives it that grain. I mean, I guess most people know what grain is. So if I just disable that, you can see that the image here is relatively clean and free of any kind of grain. If I turn that on, you can see immediately we've got a little bit of noise introduced here, which kind of emulates that film look. And again, you've got different profiles for different types of films. You've got 8mm, 16mm, 35, and 65. So if I put it onto 65, it's quite minimal. If I go all the way to 8mm, and let's go to 50, you can see that's quite harsh. Yeah, you increase that ISO, and you got a little bit more noise in there. I quite like the 35mm one that I defaulted to. I think it was the 50, or was it the 250? Yeah, I think I'll put it on the 250. And then again, you can play around with that amount and you can crank it right up if you want a real grungy, dirty look. I do like a bit of grain. I do think it looks quite good on certain types of footage, especially this kind of workout footage in a dark gym. So I'm going to disable and enable. You can see what that's done. Halation, this is quite a popular one. You may have heard of Halation before, so let's just enable this. I'm going to crank it up so you can see exactly what it does. It's quite hard to see, so they've got this option called mask mode. And if you can see here, I don't know if it's very clear on this screen recording, but there's little areas of red where it's showing you where the halation. Now, these are the barbells that are standing up in the background. So if I take that mask off, so you can see these barbells here. So have a look here while I toggle that halation on and off, and you'll see what it does. So it just gives it a little bit of a red tintish glow to the highlights here. And you can also have a look around here where the sun is shining through the window. If I turn that on, it's just giving it a little bit of a lift there as well. So I'm going to just turn that down a little bit. It doesn't need to be 100. I think 89 is about right. I do like this mask mode because it does show you the areas that are being affected by this particular effect. So again, a little bit goes a long way. So halation is the next one. And then bloom as well. You like to use bloom, so let's enable that. And again, just look at these highlight areas. So look at the metal pieces here. So the barbells are a good example. The chain on the heavy bag. Look at the seat here. And then look at this area where the sun's coming into the room. So if I click enabled, you can see it just lifts that a little bit. You can see down here in the scopes when I click it on, it just lifts it a little bit. And I'm going to just crank it up just for the purposes of this demo. Yeah, you can see here it's really bloomed all of these highlights. It's a little bit like using a Pro Mist filter. If you've ever used a Pro Mist filter on your camera, I use them all the time. This is effectively what that does. So if you are using a Pro Mist filter, maybe this is something you don't want to use, or just don't use your Pro Mist filter and you can emulate it in here. So again, you've got that mask mode, which I really like. So yeah, you can see here, these are all this is the seats, this is the barbells, this is the ring in the background. So this is the area that it's impacting. So I'm going to just take that down because I think that's a bit too much. Let's put it about there. So let's have a look. Yeah, so it just makes it look like the sun's, especially here on this barbell, it makes it look like the sun's just that little bit brighter coming into the room. I quite like that. So that's bloom. And then you got film damage. So film damage is when you kind of see that little bit of damage in the film, little specks of white and little tears, little things like that. So it's quite hard to see on a still image. I'm going to just crank it up and I'm going to just play this from the beginning. And you can see here, there's little bits of specks of white just coming in. And that's because I've got it. If I disable it, it's not there. If I enable it, yeah, it's come back there. So again, it's very, very subtle, but it does look quite good. And it's defaulted to 50%. You can take this and let's put it to 8mm. This should be a bit more intense. So yeah, so now you can see it's really kind of grunged up that image and giving it a bit of damage. That looks quite good. I'm gonna put this on 16. I do like a bit of film. Yeah, I'm gonna put it on 16 and I'm gonna just crank that up a little bit there. Yeah, that looks good to me. So that's film damage, a really, really nice one, that one. Okay, this next one I use depending on the type of footage. Now, film breath, what that does is it's when the film is kind of breathing, it's kind of moving in and out, and you'll see that in a moment when I apply it. So I'm going to just go to quite an aggressive one here, which is the Super 8mm. I'm going to crank it up to 100, and I'm going to enable it. In fact, I'll do it without first. So have a look at this footage, just watch around here, and you'll see that the colors are relatively staying the same. So there's not much going on here. It's just all the effects I've applied before. Now, if I play it back with this enabled, what you'll see is little changes in the color, the exposure. You can see it kind of goes magenta for a while, then it goes kind of green. So it's quite aggressive when it comes to that. So you could dial that right down. Let's put it to 30 and have a look and see if that looks any. Actually, that looks quite good. I quite like that. So depending on your footage, you can dial that down a little bit more. Yeah, so that film breath is another one that I use very sparingly at times. And then the only other one I will use is the Vignette. And we all know what Vignette is. So if I just enable that, you can see that it just, these edges here, it just adds a little bit of a vignette and it just focuses on that image. Again, if I put the mask on, you can see exactly where that mask is. And then I can change that mask and change the size of it. I can bring it out to the edges, or I could really hone in on her and just make that aggressive. So I'm going to just pull that back, bring it to the edges. And I'm going to just give that, and you can change the aspect ratio slightly. I'll make it a little bit more oval shaped. There you go. Turn that mask off, and then so yeah, you can see it's just giving us a little bit of a vignette around there. So that's quite a good one. So there are a couple more options down here which I think are quite useful just to talk through and what they are, and that is the output. The output is like a kind of a master control over everything that you've applied. So you can see right now it's on 100. So if you drop this down, if we go back here, that's basically our original footage, and I can show you that by if I select this off, you can see it's not making any impact at all because this is at 0. If I put this to 100 and then I select that off, that goes back to the default, and this is with everything that we applied. So if you wanted just to dial everything back a little bit, you don't want to add too much of it, you could do it here. I'm going to just leave it on 100 because I think it looks pretty good. You might actually want to dial that back a little bit, but yeah, that's quite useful as like a little master control. And then if you are using similar footage and you're going to do a similar kind of grade, what you can actually do is you can output this as a LUT. So in this LUT generator, which is quite useful. I've not used this, but you could export this as a LUT. And then next time, instead of going through this entire process again, you could just slap this LUT onto your footage and you'll get this same effect on everything that you are working on. So that's quite useful as well. And then finally, in your options down here, here is where you can set the quality. So what I recommend is when you're actually going through and doing your grade, keep this on normal fast, but right before you export, stick it onto high and slow so you get the best quality when the export is done. Okay, so we've applied that grade to one of the clips. Let's have a look at our clips by clicking the clips down here. Now we have a second clip here which hasn't been graded. Now if we want to apply exactly this grade to this clip, we don't need to go all through that again. All you need to do is select the clip that hasn't got the grade on it, hover over the one that does, and then use your middle mouse button, which is the wheel on your mouse if you've got one. If you've got an Apple mouse, then you are in trouble. But click that, and you can see that's applied everything that we applied to this footage here. Usually, depending on the footage, it looks, I mean, to me, I'm personally happy with that. Maybe I'd want to reduce the exposure, maybe increase that vignette a little bit, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with that. It looks pretty good. And that's a nice, easy way to apply that to any other clips that you have in your timeline. Okay, so here are some of the things that I personally don't like or I think could be improved with their tools here. Now, as you saw at the beginning, all of these tabs were open by default. I'm not going to open them all, but they were all open by default, and it's just a bit messy. So I wish they actually kept them closed by default, and then you just go ahead and open the ones that you like. I also wish that you could rearrange the order in which these appear, because there are certain ones, as you said, I only use a very few of these tools. So I wish I could just put the ones in order. So I go to input, I will go to film, I will go to print, then I'll go to grain, halation, bloom, damage. I wish I could put vignette. I wish I could put those at the top and just have the others at the bottom, or have some way of favoriting them and then having some sort of favorite menu here. That would be really cool to be able to do that as well. Same with these film emulations, the actual films themselves. You have to go through this super long list to find the one that you like. I wish there was a way of favoriting the ones that you like, and maybe they just appear at the top of your list, and then you kind of have a break, and then you have the rest of the options here. Whilst we're on this, I wish that when I hovered over it, it would show me in the preview window what that looks like. So you can see this doesn't do anything, but if I click on it, then it changes. So it's just, again, it's not a huge time saver, but it just would be nice that I don't have to keep going in and clicking one by one. If I could just hover and it kind of changes, that would be really, really cool. Now, one of the big drawbacks for me with Dehancer is their pricing. They are not cheap, I'm not going to lie. And I think that their pricing could have been a little bit better. I also think it's a little bit complicated. So if we come down here to the DaVinci Resolve plugins, you can see that there's a number of different plugins you can buy. So you could buy the Pro version, which is the one that I demonstrated to you today. That has everything in it, right? So that as you saw in my demonstration, I don't use everything. So potentially this light one might be a better option for me. You can just buy the film grain. You can just buy the bloom, the halation, the film damage tool, or the monitor tool. If you want to buy the pro version, the license is $449 US. That is quite punchy, I think, especially for content creators who are just creating content for YouTube, want to get things done quick and easy. Now, I've heard people on other videos say maybe it's not for those creators. You see, I disagree. I think it is. I think this is definitely for those creators who want to create content really, really quickly. And this is perfect for that, but this pricing may put you off. Now, you can buy a 1-year license, a 6-month license, or 3-month license, but I just think that's going to be more expensive unless you only need it for a specific period of time and you're never going to use it again, which is very unlikely. Now, if it was $449 US and you get all of their plugins, and by all of their plugins, I mean their photo plugin, so the plugin for Photoshop, Lightroom, Affinity One, and Affinity Photo, then that would be great. But for that, you have to pay an extra $200 as well on top of the $449. So you can see this can start to get very, very expensive if you're doing photo and video. Now, you can toggle this option and click all products, but then it will say contact us. So they will give you a price for everything, but I just think it could have been a little bit easier and transparent on this site as to what you can buy. And that includes their mobile tool. So they have a iOS app. So if you go down here to mobile, Dehancer Photo and Video Editor, they do have an app for the iPhone and iPad on the Apple App Store. I've had a little play around with this. It is really good. So everything I showed you in this version, you can pretty much do to your videos and your photos on your phone. And as someone that does shoot a lot of video and photo content on their phone, this is really handy, especially when you just want to share quickly to social media without airdropping your photos and videos to your computer, editing them on there, and then airdropping them back so that you can share them on social media. But there is an extra cost to this as well. So there's 3 levels of pricing there if you want to use it on your desktop, if you want to use it on your mobile, if you want to use it for photography and videography as well. So the pricing could be better, which is a real shame, but don't let that put you off. Give it a go. I really do think that you will find something within this product range that works for you, even if it's the light one. So if you look at the light version, this is $199 US for a lifetime license. You get 2 seats. So this is essential toolkit for film light color grading, including film profiles, film grain, bloom, color head, and camera profiles. That's pretty much all I was using. So actually this light version, if I was going to pay for this, is probably the one that I would go to. And $199 US just for that, I think is worth it for sure. So that's it. That's my super quick run through on how I use Dehancer and why I think it really is a useful tool for content creators. If you want to check it out, remember you get 10% off. Use my code SUNJAV and let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.